Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art, the show that looks at the creative process by inviting artists to join us in a conversation about their work and their life. My name is David Schrader, and with me, as always, is my co host, Linda Scheller. Let's see if we can bring her on here. There you go. Hi, Linda. Whoa, let's have equal billing here. So, a couple of questions before we start. How are you doing with the rain? I know that you live in a place that you're concerned about flooding. Are you okay?
Yeah, at this point, I'm okay. I'm on flood warning. So I hope the river stays on that side of the road. And it's gorgeous. I mean, with the clouds and the skies and the river, that I can see right out of my windows, it's very beautiful.
Yeah,
But I hope it stays where it is and then goes back to where it belongs.
okay. And we both seem to have made it through daylight savings time without. I have many stories in my past when I missed it and missed some crazy appointments. So, anyway, uh, you know our guest for today, Tiffanie Heben, because you've interviewed her on a radio show. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. It was
Okay.
such a pleasure.
Ah, so, do you have her bio handy that you could
Yeah.
bring her on with? Bring,
Yes.
yeah.
So this is from the Grand website. Tiffanie Heben is a photographer and image maker. Ms. Heben holds a BA in sociology and a women's studies certificate from Northwestern University and JD and MPA from the University of Southern California Gould School of Law. She began her photography and design education in 2011 and has been exhibiting professionally across the region since 2015. What I want to say is her first solo exhibition.
Ah, okay, let's bring her on. There she is. Hi, Tiffanie. Welcome. Whoa, we'll give you the primary seat here. So, hello and welcome. Can you hear us? Are we? What's happening here? Oh, who did you get?
It's
Oh,
buffering.
hi.
Ah, there she is.
There she is. You came on and it was like,
Ah,
whoa, what's?
that was a dramatic entrance, Tiffanie.
Oh, I'm clicking on the having issues button. I'm thinking I'm going to have to go off and come back in. I'm not sure. It's probably my internet, so I apologize.
Well, here you are. So we made it. So, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you two know each other, so maybe it's up to me to come up with the questions about things I don't know. So, we talked a little bit before we went on the show, and I understand you've been a photographer for most of your life, which is that's interesting to me. That even as a young person, this was something that interested you. So, tell us how you got into photography.
Sure. Um, when I was a child, it was definitely during the time when we didn't have cell phones, so it wasn't normal for a young person to be going around with a camera. But for whatever reason, I was interested in taking pictures, mostly just to capture what was around me. And I had asked maybe when I was about 12 for a camera for Christmas. We didn't have a lot of money, so other kids my age generally, I think, asking for clothes or sports equipment or whatever, and I was asking for a camera. And I have a photo of my family from that time, and it's a family photo, except for, of course, I'm not in it because I'm taking the picture. Uh, it just always interested me in being able to capture images, but
Oh, let's see if we can
I
do something.
wasn't. I didn't think of it as artistic. I didn't think of it as being creative. And
Oh, we're having a little trouble hearing you. You keep falling out of sync here with
or
us.
my thing.
Yeah. Huh. So you're frozen again. If you can hear me, um, maybe you should check out and check in again. See if that
I'm
works.
not sure if you can.
Yeah. So the joys of working with this program.
Yeah. So I actually met Tiffany at the Synergy Mixer, the Mislin Gallery CCAA exhibit that will be July 2023. We're getting artistic teams together. So I'd already approached Henrietta Sparkman and she introduced me to Tiffany. And so we're going to work together on our Synergy collaboration. And for those of you out there listening, you have until April 11th to submit a video proposal, and I highly encourage you to do so.
Okay, well, it looks like we have Tiffany back. Let's see if this works.
Yay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Yeah, it's a good point. I had a question from just, you being interested in photography when you were young. What kind of camera did you get? And it was obviously not making any comments about your age, but it was back in the days of film.
Right.
Slides and
I honestly could not tell you what kind of camera it was. It was a point and shoot that took film. It didn't have a lot of options. I wasn't able to change the settings much. It was just point and shoot and no special lenses. So very basic.
So did you have your own dark room at one point, or did you?
No, it was just buy your film at the local store and take it in. At that point, we could take it in to be developed. And so you would, take it to the local Kodak developing, and that's what I would have. It wasn't until I was an adult in working, and my work had nothing to do with being a photographer, that I took a class on, photography, and we had access to a dark room, and that was my first chance to use a dark room. Didn't really stick with it other than just, continuing to take photos, but it wasn't until I had kids and I was at home with them and doing more photography that I wanted to learn more about it. So I started to get more serious. I took some classes at Las Positas where I was able to use the dark room there. And that's when I got a Canon Rebel to start, and some, a couple of lenses to try to see what else I could do with it.
So in a true photographer's question, what kind of equipment do you have now? You work with?
I think I have Canon 6D with a couple different lenses, zoom lenses. I like to do some macro work as well. And then, obviously I use Photoshop. I have mostly when I started, I was very much trying to work with natural light, then learned a little bit about using an off-camera flash, which those were whatever cheap version I could buy. I was generally not buying the high-end flashes and that kind of thing. And recently added some strobes, some studio strobes that I was able to use a little bit with my latest artist project. But part of it is I'm not a tech person, and I generally don't care that much about the equipment that I have. As long as it can, do the basics, I'm not one to really get into all the, the really detailed capabilities.
Okay. Well, you're my kind of photographer. You seem to be voicing, some of my thoughts, which is I have equipment to do what I want to create. I don't get into the technical part of it. I mean, you have to know the technical part in order to do it, but it's not something that excites me all the time.
Right.
I have to keep up with the latest that's going on. So you mentioned both darkroom and Photoshop. Do you have any thoughts about that? About moving from a lot of photographers who started, way back when, had lots of thoughts about moving to the digital darkroom as opposed to the real darkroom. Do you have any thoughts about that, or did that play a part in anything?
Part of a couple thoughts about it, I guess. Part of it was when I when I started to get more serious about photography and learning and taking classes, I was already using a digital camera. It was kind of a step back. Las Positas had a requirement. Their sequence of photography classes started with film, a camera, and so I went back and borrowed somebody's film camera, and then went back to the darkroom, and it was incredibly frustrating and hard. I do think it was very useful because it made me learn some more about things that probably if I just continued to work with a digital camera, I would never have bothered to learn the details of like learning about f-stops. And I mean, everything can be sort of, manual with a digital camera. And you have to, you can still get some good photos. Whereas when you learn with a film camera, you have to learn some of the rules, and you don't have an unlimited number of pictures available to you. You have this roll of film, and it does cost money, and it does take a lot of time to develop it. So you want to figure out how to get it right. So I think that was a good process, but I was very frustrated. But went through it and then went on to take the digital photography classes. I do believe that when we talk about more of my sort of surreal images that I'm trying to get to now, that Photoshop offers a really wonderful opportunity to play with images and just explore and try to make these fantasy images that with traditional photography in a darkroom would be much harder. Now, they're not impossible. There were photographers who used, compositing, layered exposures, that kind of thing, to make somewhat surreal images with film photographs. So I think they were sort of the precursor to Photoshop, and they helped us sort of understand all the creative possibilities of Photoshop.
Yeah, another thing that we had talked about before we went on air was, even though you started very early with photography, it was mostly, I forget the word you used, but it was mostly recording and observing things. You didn't get into the artistic part of photography until later in life.
Right. Yes. So when I was growing up, I think I mentioned was a perfectionist. I wanted to only do things that I could do really well, and I did really well at school. So I was just going to continue with that. Photography, I guess, arts. Although my parents were creative, I didn't see that as something that I could do or necessarily do well. So I went with the things that I could be great at. I get A's. I'm going to keep going with that. I went to law school, graduated with a law degree and a master's in public administration, and went into lobbying and public policy analysis, and all things that I think I did pretty well at. And it wasn't until I had kids and I decided to stay at home, and I was able to let go of some of that need to be perfect at something, and was able to explore my creative side. And I think it couldn't have happened when I was young. It had to have taken my life journey to get me to this place where I could let go of being objectively good at something and take on something that's more subjective. And different people have different feelings about what I do, and if it's not good by some people's standards, I'm okay. So
So
there
you
was
come to the point where you can actually feel comfortable seeing photography as an art.
yes,
As an
yeah.
art.
Well,
Yeah.
another part of that was my project of photographing artists in their studios. So I started it as just something fun when I was new to photography, a way to practice taking photographs. Plus, I had been at a Tracy Art League meeting where an artist was sculpting a bust as a demo, and I found myself wanting to grab my camera and take pictures of it. And I said, "Oh, I can't. It's not appropriate to do that, but maybe some people will let me come into their studios and photograph them while they're working." And so I approached some people from my community. They let me come into their studios, and it took years. It was I
Oh boy,
was
having trouble with our.
you know,
Yeah. So maybe we'll let
Back
Linda talk for a
side
minute.
project. But as
Do you have
the
any,
years went by, I was taking it more and more seriously. Hope you can see. Uh, so I
So-
focus on working artists use to learn
so
these
before
techniques.
we move on,
To do
do
that.
you have
So
any questions from your interview the other day that you'd like to
I'm
ask
sorry.
Tiffanie?
Well, I would love to see the images. Is it maybe a possibility to get that started, and then we could talk
Sure,
more about because it took how long did you work on this project, Tiffanie?
It was off and on over 7 years.
Okay, well, let's take a
I,
look
I
at this then. There we go. So this is the first image you have. What can you tell us about, this is your artist project that was exhibited in Tracy? Is that true? Oh, we've lost her again.
sorry, my computer must be a little slow.
Yeah, something's happening here.
Am I there yet?
Yeah, you're here. I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. Yes, this is from an artist. Her name was Pat Sanchez, and she was known as the gourd lady in Tracy. She carved gourds, and you can see there she's working on what she was making there was a thunder drum, and she was kind enough to teach my son how to do it. At the time she taught this, she was very ill with cancer and passed away not too long after that. And she was a beautiful spirit. And I think that's one of the things that was so wonderful about this project was I started off just thinking I was going to come in and take photographs, yet from the very first meeting, I realized that it was more than that. I was going to have conversations with these people. I was going to get to know them. And I came out of it with these great friendships and people who were really willing to share things and, put themselves out there. And so here she was teaching my son how to make a thunder drum, which is something she would show every year at Tracy Expressions. And the kids who come through on the school tours would always comment and get to hear the thunder drum. So it was sort of a regular thing like, oh, this year, oh, where's the thunder drum? And my son loved it. And so one of her last things that she did as an artist was teach him how to make a thunder drum.
Beautiful picture too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's one of the things when the project started, it was for me, it was kind of almost like PR for these artists. Like, oh, I'm coming in, I'm taking these pictures of them. The work is about them. And towards the end, when I was getting to the point of putting together a show, William Wilson at the Grand Theater would say, what do you want to say? This isn't a show about Pat Sanchez or Henrietta Sparkman, or it's your show. What do you want to say? And the process of writing the exhibition proposal, really thinking about my work made me understand how I went from, someone who called themselves a photographer to someone who called themselves an artist. I was dedicating my life basically to creating images that reflected how I wanted artists to be seen. I wanted people to see my images and say, artists are important, artists are special in our community. And so the images needed to say that about artists. They were what I wanted people to see, not necessarily like, this is Pat Sanchez. This is an artist, and look at her beautiful hands, and look at the colors and how she worked with colors, and how artists bring this specialness to our lives. So
Wonderful. So what do we have next here?
So this is about the beauty of the worn table, the artist tables, and how, they drip their materials onto them and they become these works of art themselves. Susan Richardson is a calligraphy artist, and she was the first person I worked with. And she's just a really warm personality, and gave of her time and her energy to sort of mentor me, support me in this project. But her studio was so warm and inviting, and I think you get that from the picture. And again, like you look at that table of hers, just it's
Right.
work hard itself. So this is Mark Nyes, who I had mentioned. He's a sculptor and a woodworker. And just when I think of people, I talked in my show about artists as community builders. And Mark is one of these people who gives so much of his talent and his energy to the art community in Tracy. He helps with expressions and he contributes works to the Grand. He created a free library for the Grand Theater that looks like a giant robot, and it are art materials that people can just take like you would a free library book. But in this, he has sculpted Sam Matthews, who's in the background. That's the sculpture that he has made. And Sam Matthews is a sort of an icon in the Tracy community as a newspaper publisher and historian.
I love the way he's looking over the artist's shoulder. I think that's just such a wonderful placement.
Thank you.
I have a similar picture in my house.
Do you?
The creation of the artist is looking at the artist.
Mm.
So it's an interesting juxtaposition. Oh, there's a studio.
This guy, Leo Giovacchini, is sort of a real character. He also has passed away since then, but his studio, where he would obviously works with wood, he was meticulous, and like you can see down the left side, there's a bunch of drawers. He designed this studio, and every time he needed something, he would just make whatever it was that he needed. If he needed more storage, he would make another drawer. So he would just have these cabinets full of drawers, and everything was organized so perfectly. But it was one of those interesting things that I thought I never actually saw him working. And I think it was because he was a perfectionist and he was uncomfortable with me photographing him working because he might make mistakes. That's sort of the impression that I got after getting to know him a little bit. And he was ultimate host. Every time I come, you're going to come tea in my kitchen. But so his studio, I don't know what's going on with it now, but I remember William saying, you need to get in there and take those pictures because we don't know, once he's gone, we don't know what's going to happen with that. It may not exist after that.
I also really appreciate the fact that here you are highlighting some of the artists that people might not automatically think of as artists, whether they're making drums, woodworking. It's lovely that it's so inclusive of other aspects of art.
I think I am drawn to sort of a variety of different types of work, and sort of broad definition of art.
Another colorful studio.
That is gorgeous. I love that. Oh, what a wonderful photograph.
Yeah. Jose Luis Pina Morales came to my attention through Facebook. Basically, this was, as I had mentioned, I was realizing that I may have been drawn to artists that were more just like the people I'd see at the Tracy Art League meetings, and I needed to more fully represent the diversity of artists who are in my community. Jose Luis primarily speaks Spanish, so I was lucky enough his wife is a Spanish teacher at a local high school, and so she was our translator. But he comes from Mexico, and his style it speaks to me. I don't always love the work of the artists that I'm photographing. That's just, I don't pick them necessarily because I think, I'm really drawn to their art. Although usually after I get to know them and get to know what they're doing, I do love their work by the end. But his work was I was immediately drawn to. I think in part because my dad was very much a Salvador Dali fan, MC Escher, and there was just something about this work that surrealist to me. He calls it geometric surrealism. So when I saw it on Facebook, I was like, I got to figure out how to meet this guy, and he's just a wonderful. Wants to include everyone in the excitement he feels about his work. He has so much energy. And this is his living room, actually. Like it's his studio and his living room. He has all his work up. And this is Ingrid Canton. She is an art teacher and also has spent the last few years working with one of our local high schools on their sets. So this is a set at Kimball High School. And she goes in and helps design the sets, helps the students learn to paint as well, and got involved because her kids were involved in the theater department, and she was, obviously she could bring her skills. I wanted to highlight, again, our local artists contributing to our community. Kimball High School is known for its theater productions, and part of it is the wonderful set design that they have.
So I don't know where this question is going to fit in, but since you have made contact with artists in a variety of fields, I'm just wondering how that affected you in your view of art, to see these different people. What have you learned about art in general through all of this? Did that ever occur to you, what you were seeing?
I think that as far as sort of techniques of art creation, I haven't learned as much as I would like. I think, because I've been in the studio of a glass artist and studio of a ceramicist and somebody who worked in sculpture. And I feel like I should be more knowledgeable and be able to use the terminology that they use. But I often didn't retain those details. What stuck with me was more of the relationship building, and the sort of general things about art. For example, the experiences some people have had with failure or critique, and the lessons that they would share with me, and how I was able to grow from that. So that's why I think in some ways it's more universal concepts that artists are dealing with, or issues that they have to deal with, as opposed to sort of the techniques or anything that's related to a particular medium.
Right. So did you feel you were among your people?
I did. Although at first I felt very much the amateur and nervous going in, just what if I mess up? What if I don't come out with anything good? And certainly that happened even farther into the project, where I thought I had more expertise or whatever. And then I go in and, have a bad day, basically photographing. And then you have to explain it to the person. Oh, yeah, I didn't get any good pictures of you. So you're not included. And that's not fun. But I think overall, like I said, as I grew into it and became more confident, and really the show was a big part of that whole process of putting together a show and then putting my stuff out there and having it be very public, that I was able to embrace. When someone says, how did you know when you were an artist? Well, took many, many, many years. But it wasn't until like the last year that I would say I was confident in saying I'm an artist. But I gained that from the support I got from all the artists in this project.
Did you have conversations with them about how they wanted to be seen? Do you any comments back about whether you caught what they experienced being an artist?
Yeah, actually, a little bit of the opposite. Like, there were times of discomfort, or people not necessarily thinking I got them right. And but me feeling like, well, this is the picture I wanted to make. There was, in particular, there was a woman who um, was very involved with the Art League, and she was a real leader in our community, and she's very driven. And I looked at her as inspiration for somebody who um, was taking on so much. She had kids the same age as my kids, and for me, she was an inspiration. She was very determined to make her name in art, and not all of the people that I'm worked with really cared that much. They were doing their thing. They were being creative. Some people wanted to achieve bigger than, say, Tracy or the surrounding community. She was one of those people that I felt like she had a plan for herself, and she was very driven, and I wanted a photograph like that. I wanted to show her as serious and determined. And so the picture I took, she didn't like, and it is in amongst these pictures, so we'll get to there eventually.
Yeah.
But it's a black and white of a woman with glasses. I don't know if you wanted to pull that one up, but when I sent it to her, she was like, I don't know. And she said, oh, my husband, my kids tell me it's good. But it clearly, it didn't reflect how she saw herself, but it reflected how I saw her. So I was, I put that out there. There was another, or am I okay? You give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, or say, because I'm not sure if I froze. Okay.
No, you're fine.
Okay. There is another image of a woman who is posed with a couple of paintings that are, this is Gail Nyes. She does a lot of work that is about her family. And so I wanted to pose her with some images. That one is a painting she did of her mother. One is a painting her mother did of her, because I felt like her work is a lot about family relations. And I was nervous about how she would feel about that picture, because I felt like maybe I was revealing a little bit about her that maybe she doesn't necessarily.
Well, when they come up, you remind me of that. So
Okay.
we have here.
This is Cash Bryan, who is a photographer. He was a mentor to me, part of the Tracy Camera Club, and his health over the years has made it. At that point, he had to be in a scooter, but he just doesn't let it slow him down. And here he is, he's setting up for a photography shoot at the Grand. And I just admire his tenacity. It's something, he's driven to take photos. He's not going to let something like being in a scooter slow him down. And I think that's an interesting, I thought, well, if I continue this project, what I want to look at maybe is the way that artists, they change their work, they alter their circumstance, to deal with age and health issues. This drive to create is still there. So they have to change things in their lives to still be able to create. But I would love to explore that, I think.
Uh-huh.
This is an artist. When I was realizing so many of my artists were older, I wanted to reach out to young people, and somebody put me in contact with Caleb, and he's very talented student studying art and taking it very seriously, pursuing it at college. But he had painted this work, and for him, his purpose, he feels like he was given a calling from God to bring light to people through his work. And so when he showed me this, I was like, well, I really want to take a picture of you with that. And with the sort of dark and light of his face, the candle giving light to his face as well, his artwork lighting him up.
Another beautiful composition.
It really is.
This is
Yeah.
love of materials.
Yes.
As artists, we're drawn to certain things that we love the feel of it. I work with paper at times, and there's just, I don't know what it was. It's just something in me drawn to working with paper. Well, Mark, I see those little curls of wood on his hand, and you get the sense of just that love of the material.
right. There's been a lot of posts on Facebook of people working with lathes.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a fascinating art form.
Yes.
It looks like fun. Uh,
So yeah, I had the two images next to each other because in some ways they're similar with the spinning wheel and what can be done with it. This Beverly Turner, who in this particular photo, she's working with her gems and rocks that she makes jewelry with, though she is also a sculptor as well.
mm,
In this case, it was partly the look of the wood, um, just the lighting there is why I chose this photo. And these
oh yeah.
little jewels to me, the colors, these are parts that you put on a Dremel. The woman who from the very first photo who would carve gourds, these are the tools that she would use.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a variation on pictures that a lot of people take of artists' paintbrushes.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
another set of tools, which
Yeah.
is equally fascinating.
Mhm. So
So
this was
this is the woman you were talking about?
yes, who didn't like her photo. And to me, I wanted, she's if you meet her in person, she's a great person. She's smiling and everything. But I was like, I want to see your seriousness. I know that you are gonna, you're determined to do something in this art world.
Oh, I wouldn't like it either. I no, I understand. I understand so much of something like that. Working with a group of photographers once, we were taking each other's pictures, and this woman was into taking very stark, uh, high contrast pictures, and took one of me where I looked. I mean, I am old, but when she got through with me, I looked like 110. Like, I actually liked it because they didn't quite recognize me, but I know I know what that feels like. Oh, are
Mhm.
you like that, by the way? Um, I've met so many photographers who do not like to be photographed themselves. That they like to work behind they like to work behind the camera. It blocks them from um, I guess whatever being a
I Yeah, I don't think I am that way because I use myself as a subject often. I do a lot of self portraits, and I've tried to overcome that issue. I mean, I've taken some pictures that are not traditionally flattering of myself, and the other way, obviously, like pictures that I think reflect how I think I want to look. But I'm trying to use that as an opportunity to. I do understand that people have this image in their head of what they think they look like. And if you're doing traditional photography, portrait photography to some degree, you're trying to please that person. You're trying to bring out of them in the picture what they think they look like. And I certainly, when somebody does that for me, I'm very appreciative. I'm like, yeah, that's you got it. That's what I think I look like. Um, but like I said, I'm trying to move beyond that and have certain types of looks that I want to get or that I'm looking for in other people. So I need to do it to myself as well. So some of those less flattering ones.
So if you've used yourself as a model, let's see, there's two questions pop up. Uh, Cindy Sherman, are you familiar with her
A
work?
little bit. Mhm.
Yeah. And selfies. Are you a selfie person?
Not a lot.
Okay.
Not a lot. Not a lot of selfies. I like to do just, simple phone pictures when I'm with my friends to just like record a moment so that because I have fun going back, and seeing things from years ago when it pops up. Oh, look what we were doing at that time. But I am definitely not one of those people. Like if you went on my Facebook post, you would not see sort of a lot of those selfies with filters and all that stuff. I don't do that kind of thing.
Uh,
You did mention Vivian Meyer when we were talking,
Yes.
Do you use reflections then as a form of self-portraits?
I have in the past, more, just as experimenting, I think. I've done some pictures, like, for shows where the purpose was, at one time there was, showing photographers, showing you as a photographer. So I was using pictures in the mirror, pictures I went out around town and, tried to capture my own image in, in the glass to show myself as a photographer. Um, and I do love Vivian Meyer's work, but, I'm not I'm definitely learning that the relationship between my subject and me is important, whereas I think, I mean, not that it wasn't important for her, but she was photographing strangers and catching them at, different times, and while I love that work, it's not comfortable for me to do.
Okay. So have you ever gone into the direction of Cindy Sherman and not only just use yourself as a model, but dress yourself up in certain ways to?
Yes, I mean, not as extensively as she has in any way, but one of the images towards the end in the fantasy section is uses a photograph of myself. I did a self-portrait and I'm dressed with a turban. Um, and so that, yeah, I have disguised myself in a way.
No, it's great. That's really interesting to hear.
And so this is another picture of Jose Luis. I wanted to get a more formal seated portrait of him. He's such a character, though. I didn't really have to do much. Say sit in front of this canvas of yours, and he likes to pose. He likes to take pictures and have people take pictures of him. So he came up with that himself, pretty much. I just did the lighting.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great.
This is Lino again, the one who has the studio with all the wood. And he was just walking. He had a separate storage area of wood that when you walked in, I said it reminded me of like the Harry Potter scene where they're in a room where there's all these old discarded belongings. So everywhere you look, it towers up to the sky with discarded furniture and magical things or whatever. When you walked into this separate shed room of Lino's, you're looking up at wood all the way up, towering over your head. And so we came out of there and he was just standing with this dark doorway behind him and all this wood that if you look, it has numbers on it. It's all labeled because he's so meticulous with the way he organized his stuff that all of that wood has different notations on it. And I was like, just stop. This is where I need you to be.
Wow.
And this is Matt Farnsworth, who he started as an illustrator, doing comic books, and he had recently moved into ceramics and sculpture, and he worked at the Grand for a while. And he was the one person. One of the things that I would find is it was hard to do work, and I don't know, David, if you've had this experience. I was trying to photograph these people. They wanted to talk, most of them. I think it was sort of being uncomfortable with the silence and having me move around them with the camera. Most people wanted to explain what they were doing or talk about something. And it can kind of, I was like, how are you working when I'm trying to take photos and respond to the conversation, but I'm trying to think of like, what settings do I need to put in or how do I need to adjust the lighting? So it often was, a struggle. I wanted to hear what they were saying and be in part of the conversation, but I was trying to do my work as well. I walked in, he put his headphones on and he blocked me out for the whole time. I
Wow.
was like, I was not even there. He was in his own world. So people ask me at the show, like, why do you do color for some of your photos and why do you do black and white? And this one, it was interesting because there was sort of a color story going on. Everything was very white, the table's silver, and then he had a red apron on and the crock pot was red. And I kind of thought, oh, that's kind of cool that just those touches of red. But I felt like the setting was so much about sort of the solitude of it and the quietness of the whole environment that I thought the black and white was more appropriate for this one.
It fits.
No. And this was one of the ones I was mentioning with Gail Nyes, who does a lot of her art. It revolves around family issues, and she had painted the image at the top where the woman is drinking from a bowl. That's her mother when she was ill, and then the image at the bottom, the painting at the bottom, is Gail as a young woman playing the flute. Her mom was a painter, and she painted Gail while she was, playing her instrument. And so I wanted to get those images together because I felt it spoke to Gail's family, like the way her topics deal with family issues. And I was nervous at the time that she might feel like it was a little too revealing or something. And but she ended up liking it. She bought it. So I think that was a sign that she was glad that I had taken it.
Well, that brings up another question in my mind, or something I've observed, which is you're talking about this woman, this painter, using her family as her inspiration. What about your inspirations? Have you noticed anything in your work as to what moves you, what you take pictures of more than not, or something like that?
Yes, I think, well, first of all, people. I think people are infinitely interesting. It's almost like an image isn't like it doesn't draw me unless there's some element of the human in it. And I know that's different for other people. I know people who are landscape artists and that kind of thing, and they want nature, and I don't really care about nature or landscapes, or I want people. And I enjoy that interaction. I enjoy saying something about them. As I said, more recently, I think I've moved in a more fantasy or surrealist way of looking at things. I'm inspired by joy. I want to produce works that I feel are joyful, I think, or beautiful in a way, not necessarily like traditionally beautiful, but so I found, like, during COVID, I really felt very uninspired, very sad. I was doing work that involved interactions with people. I needed to be with people. I was taking photographs of people, and of course, we weren't supposed to be doing that. And just the general trend of things, I was feeling very discouraged and sad and uninspired to do any work. Was like, I'm not going to be one of those photographers that changes their techniques and photographs people through windows or whatever they were trying to do to, I just was like, I'm probably done with this. And it wasn't that way, but so yes, very motivated by people. And right now I'm motivated by this idea of presenting people in a way that isn't very realistic, isn't super realistic. Like, I love this project, and but I want to move in a way that sort of challenges how we think about what people look like.
Okay. Well, let's see.
So
Move on to
kind of my
about
current motivation, I guess. I don't
your
know how I'm going to
fantasy,
do it, but
your new things, and there you go. So, in the time
yeah.
we have left, we can talk to your new direction here.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
This came from a traditional portrait, although the girl is dressed unusually. She's dressed for an anime convention. I have something that appeals to me is graphic design, poster design, things that are more graphic in nature, like advertising kind of things sometimes appeal to me, and the clean lines. And so this was an example of taking shapes. It was actually taken from an collage that I had seen where it was basically just shapes, and cutting out parts of a photograph to put them together in a way to just, and again, there's like no real reason for it. It was just interesting, I guess, to me.
Okay.
So all the different components were originally within one photograph?
Yes, yes. So there
Oh,
was an interesting wall with, you can see right behind her face, this sort of little bit of red and pink color that has a pattern on it. That's from the wall behind her. So the piece that's coming down the middle is that wall cut out. The blue and white is from her clothes. So it was just a matter of like, how can I reconstruct this image to give a different feel? And
Yeah. Or deconstruct and reconstruct.
yeah. Mhm. This is, I think, what motivated me in large part to think that I can go in a different direction with some of my photography. It was I don't know if you know her at Cosumnes River College, Patty Felk. She does a color photography class. And she gave us this random assignment. She said, I'm going to pick a color, a subject, and a verb. And you need to make a picture out of it. And the words I got were blue slouching staircase. And I thought, what in the world? This is not ever a kind of thing I don't work this way. Build a relationship with somebody. Blue slouching staircase. So and I did composites already. So I would go into Photoshop and blend different images together. So that part was okay. I thought I'm going to get a staircase. And I thought of my son who has an issue with his posture and think of him as slouching. So I'm like, I went to Sacramento and I kind of snuck into an old building that was being repaired in the old town and took a picture of their staircase and composited it with a picture of my son taken with blue filters. And I started, just seeing, oh, it kind of looks like wings. It kind of, but the reaction that people have to this, there's no, like, I don't have this means whatever anybody thinks it means. I've had people who came to me who have had back problems, and it spoke to them because, the connection to physical posture, people who have just talked about the vulnerability of, that they saw in it.
to me, it suggests like the architecture of the body, but the strength, just the sort of foundational um, structure that we so rely on. It's fascinating. I really like this.
Thank you. So this was, again, from one of those classes that I was taking at Cosumnes River College, where we were supposed to do a portrait in a triptych form. And I had this idea of Susan Richardson, who's a calligraphy artist, thinking about her as the goddess of calligraphy. And I told her, again, this was going to be one of these things that's kind of hard to do because she's a beautiful woman. And but I want to show older women that the power and the beauty that they have. But it was, I figured it, in some level, she's thinking probably this isn't how I look, but in this, she's a goddess. And so she looks tough. She looks mean. So a lot of gods and goddesses were not that nice. She's serious about her work. And the background is her own painting or her own mixed media, I should say, work. So I used that as a backdrop and asked her to wrap fabric around herself. And I created the necklace myself and asked her to grab some tools. And so I chose to do the background, the gold part, of course, create that as well. So I just went back to some historical references as far as how would a triptych be presented. So the arches, that kind of thing in the gold background. That's what I was sort of speaking to. History. So this is the work where I used a self-portrait. I had for a class, taken a picture of myself. I would become sort of fascinated with seeing these women in turbans. And so I wrapped a scarf around my head and some fabric around my shoulders and took the portrait of myself. But then wanting to, I have sort of in my own background, I always had a very curly hair. And so there was always, hair is an issue for me. And the idea of seeing, I saw these tentacles, which of course it's not my artwork, that is taken from Henkel, who was an artist of sea life. And there's materials where they produce where you're able to purchase some of his artwork on a disc so that you can use it yourself. So that's Photoshopped. Those tentacles are tweaked in Photoshop and added to and taken away from, but originally came from a different artist. The clock is my kitchen clock. So it's a photo of my kitchen clock, but you see it has 50 hours on it.
Fading out again, but let's see, do we have,
The
here's your last one. Yeah.
original intention.
Oh dear, you're frozen again. What
Okay.
a time.
I photoshopped it to add extra because adding it really.
Our time is almost up. So
Oops.
here, let me just, there. So anyway.
Oh,
Whew.
okay. Yeah, this is just my most recent
Yeah,
one.
I like it. So anyway, maybe it's time that it's about time that we're out of time anyway. So until your connection gets buffered and you come back, what I can say is I've thoroughly enjoyed this as a fellow photographer. I enjoyed all of your work. I enjoyed your work with the artists. I enjoyed your new work. I don't know if you've had any feedback on your new work, because some traditional photographers have problems with people who do manipulation to the degree that we see here. I happen to like it. I happen to think it's very creative. And I look forward to seeing more of it, I hope, somewhere. So
Yeah, so do I.
yeah.
This
So
was fascinating.
Thank you. I'm
here we are.
sorry.
Oh no.
Welcome back.
Oh, did you hear the things I was saying that I really enjoyed?
No, but
See your new stuff. I truly enjoy it. So
thank you. I enjoyed it too. I appreciate it.
so keep in touch. Let us know where you're showing again. Love to see it. I'm doing similar kinds of things right now as because of my involvement with the Arts Council in Stanislaus County, finding ways of using photography to promote art and artists in the community. And so doing a lot of what you did in your project, which is finding ways to photograph artists, talk to them like on this show, and basically explore the whole area of art. So you were a good example. I truly enjoyed this. So,
So did I. It was wonderful.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
So we're right at the time, so we can end the broadcast, see what happens there.